the only officer
Yeah.
present. Yeah, so you would be the one to start the meeting, and then if you guys want to arrange something else among yourselves, like, great, but yes, it falls,
Okay.
it falls to you.
All right, then I will go ahead and call this meeting to order of the Area Board of Zoning Appeals for Tuesday, March 26th. And I will pass control over to former President Scott.
Well, do we need, I guess we need a roll call vote, don't we?
We do, a roll call of members, yeah.
Roll call members,
So,
yes, there you go, vote, sorry.
Andy Bailey is absent, Grant Buller is absent, Stacy Pettigo,
Here,
present, Scott Hutzensberger,
Yes, here.
Chester Benkus,
Here.
and then staff members Liz Stitzel and Kat Beller present, as well as BZA Attorney Jay Moore.
Okay, and did we, I think, did everybody read through the minutes?
Yeah.
Yep,
I did as well. Do we have a motion to approve those?
sure. Motion to approve the minutes as presented.
second.
And we'll do a quick roll call vote on that.
Okay, just a second here. Stacy Pettigo,
Yes.
Scott Hutzensberger,
Yes.
Chester Benkus.
Yes.
Okay, we got any old business?
We do not have any old business. I would recommend, though, I may be wrong, we should have had the foresight. Usually we have people sign what hearing they're here for, but I have a suspicion that a good chunk of the crowd here is perhaps here for the first case, in which case I would recommend reversing it and handling the other three quickly so that people who aren't here for that don't have to stay.
Did you say for the first case?
So can we just, if we can just get a little bit of cooperation from the room? If you're here for the Edwards case, can you raise your hand? Okay, so we kind of got a chunk. Skiles? Okay. Mawson
They're the petitioners.
and Orem.
And they're the petitioners.
Okay, so I guess I'd recommend we deal with Mawson and Orem first, since there's not a large group here, then they don't have to
Okay.
sit through the whole thing if they don't want to be entertained. And then we can come back around to the others where there may be more conversation.
All right, let's do that. Do we need any kind of special? Perfect.
No, you don't have to do anything special other than just announce what you
Everybody-
want to hear in what order.
So why don't we do docket number 1124 SE? And do I need to sell the application number here as well?
Yeah, CC 2020.
AC 2024-00129.
Whose application it is?
Evan and Eric.
Petition of Evan and Erica Mawson. If you could take us through the staff report.
I can. As you noted, this is the petition of Evan and Erica Mawson. It's a request for a special exception for a single residence in the agricultural district. Both this property and everything surrounding it are zoned agriculturally. This site is an approximately 10-acre lot. It's on the south side of East 700 South between 1200 East and 1300 East in Section 14 of Sugar Creek Township. This proposed new lot is a first split of a 33.33 acre parent tract. The site itself is completely woodland. It's surrounded by farmland. According to Beacon, the site does have some wetlands, but the property owner, who is the petitioner's stepfather, hired a delineation consultant, and the consultant has flagged where the actual wetlands are on the site. They're significantly less than what Beacon shows. And there was a report generated, which did come in and get filed with the application. So there is sufficient room on this lot in order to even consider whether or not something can be built there. There's some photos included in the staff report that kind of shows where those wetlands are and where the delineation shows that they actually are. And that's not uncommon. The wetlands maps were created by the federal government in the 70s, and they did it off of satellite imagery. So like we have hog lagoons designated as protected freshwater wetlands and kind of all kinds of, it's just what they had available in technology at the time, and there's never been the funding to revise it. So we deal with this a lot, where what's designated as a wetland and what's actually functioning as a wetland may not be the same thing. We also did confirm with the Department of Natural Resources that the floodplain in this area, because there is a waterway, is less than 1 square mile, and thus it is exempt from floodplain requirements or the need to complete a floodplain study, because there's not enough land drained to cause an issue. So on the second page, you'll see the proposed lot outlined in red, and then an access that will go to the north there. You can see the wetlands there at the bottom of that, and then on the next page, you can see the actual wetlands are limited to the stream and just a small area on the south side of the stream that's actually by delineation, showing all the necessary characteristics to be considered a protected wetland. There's a picture that shows the woodland looking from 700 South. Staff did do a point system on this lot, but it only scored 5 points. The two items that caused points to be deducted were first the lot sizes between 3 and 20 acres, and then the lot is less than 2,640 foot from a confined feeding operation. So the lot's southeast corner measures 1,885 foot from the confined feeding, but that does mean the dwelling will meet the quarter mile required setbacks. There's not any variance issue here. It's just that we deduct points if you're within a mile of a confined feeding, and you'd have to have enough criteria in some other area to overcome that. In terms of request analysis, there's 4 criteria in section 513.03 of the Unified Development Ordinance, which the board would need to find affirmatively are met. First, the lot shall be located such that the proximity to other dwellings, the configuration of the parent tract, and the location of creeks, ditches, and other natural features have the least negative impact on the use of agricultural equipment or the use of the property as part of a farm. So this site is all woodland. There's tillable ground surrounding it. There's several other dwellings in the vicinity. One of the dwellings is owned by the same owner who has the confined feeding. But they're not taking tillable ground out of production for this proposed site. 2, locating a dwelling on the new lot would not require changes in road surfaces or bridges. The site's on a well-maintained paved road that serves farm equipment and other homes. Does not appear a dwelling would significantly affect traffic flow or volume. 3, locating a dwelling on the new lot would not interfere with current agricultural practices in the adjacent area nor substantially restrict the expansion of confined feeding and other ag practices. So this 10-acre lot is completely woodland. There is an item permitted confined feeding that's 2,640 foot from the southeast corner of this lot to that location. It caused a deduction of 2 points on the point system. It is, however, more than a quarter mile from the site, so that means the CAFO has to sit back a quarter mile from a house, and then vice versa, the house from the CAFO. So they're not close enough that there would be any encroachment on the operations ability to expand or exist or rebuild. Additionally, there are existing houses that already exist that are closer to the confined feeding than this proposed site would be. So the problems, the confined feeding would have some challenges rebuilding, but they would be relative to houses already in existence, not relative to a home set here. There's a green circle here just to show you what that quarter mile radius looks like. So you can get a sense for it. And that was done from the perimeter, not necessarily from the house, even though the setback would be from the house. We don't know where the house is. So this would be a worst case from any side. And you can also see there's 2 other houses there that sit closer to it on the other side that have quarter mile circles that overlap. 4, that there are mitigating circumstances in the application of the above rating criteria. So the primary mitigating circumstance is this site is all woodland that's not taking any farm ground out of production, with the exception of the portion that will be cut out for the access drive along the boundary line. With wetland on the site and an open creek, this isn't an area that could be clear cut for productive tillable. And the site and the surrounding field belong to the petitioner's stepfather and mother. There's 6 special exception standards contained in section 203.11 that also apply and need to be considered. So first, the proposed use conforms to the district provisions in which it will be located and the general regulations of the ordinance. If the special exception is granted, then a single-family home would be permitted. If the BZA approves this, then it will need to go to the Plan Commission for minor subdivision approval. Second, the proposed use shall not involve an element or cause a condition that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to other property or persons, and shall comply with the performance standards herein. So the Health Department has no objections to the request. A soil test report is on file. The lot is suitable for septic. It will require a perimeter drain outlet that can be identified at the minor subdivision approval stage. However, with an open creek on the property, it should not be difficult to find a suitable outlet. That's usually where it would end up going. 3, the proposed use shall be sited, oriented, and landscaped so the relationship of its buildings and grounds to adjacent buildings and properties do not impair health, safety, or comfort, nor adversely affect values of adjacent properties. The petition site is completely woodland. It's surrounded by farmland with several other dwellings around it to the east, north, and west. A new home would be spaced from the other dwelling, would sit back off the road over 400 foot, and would have coverage in terms of not really being able to see it with woodland around it on all sides. It would not appear that a dwelling in this location would adversely affect other property values or change the rural appearance of the area. 4, the proposed use shall produce a total environmental effect consistent with and not harmful to the environment of the neighborhood. So again, it's woodland. There's some other existing homes in the vicinity. Another rural home would not seem inconsistent. 5, the proposed use shall organize vehicular access and parking to minimize conflicting traffic movement on adjacent streets. There's plenty of room on this 10 acres for 2 parking spaces, which is the ordinance requirement, so no issue there. And finally, the proposed use shall promote the objectives of the ordinance and be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So Objective 1, Policy 1 states to minimize development on agricultural land, and Sugar Creek Township's future land use plan designates this area for primarily agricultural, and then rural residential development near the Pickard area, which is about 3 miles to the north. In this area, the dwellings are spaced apart. They do conform to the comprehensive plan average density, which says in agricultural districts there should be no more than 1 home for every 20 acres on average. And the petition site is on property that continues to be farmed, owned by the petitioner's parents, mother and stepfather. Additionally, since there's other homes in the vicinity, this is not making a significant increase in the land where confined feeding operations and grain handling operations are prevented from siting. So a new lot would not appear to adversely affect the future plan of continued agricultural use in Sugar Creek Township and would appear consistent with the objectives of the comprehensive plan. Staff recommends to approve this request for 1 home, noting minor subdivision approval will also be necessary. We did include also a drawing just to kind of show you what's happening, because sometimes these setbacks can be a little bit confusing. But the large, thick pink circle is the 1/4 mile radius around the confined feeding operation. The narrow banded pink circle is what the 1/4 mile around the house owned by the CAFO would be should it end up in separate ownership. And then you've got the existing home to the north with their circle, and then the circle if a house was placed on the south side of the creek all the way to the back of this, what that circle would be. Now, of course, if it goes on the other side, then it overlaps with the other houses up on 700. But it does not go any closer than the circle of the house to the east, which sits at 640 foot. If they built their house at the minimum setback at the back corner, the 1/4 mile circle would still be 740 foot from the confined feeding, which does leave ample room for their expansion and does not appear to cause any greater effect. The area that's kind of new that gets off to the side has other wetland and creeks through it, so it's not a location you could place a confined feeding operation anyway. And that concludes the staff report. We have not received any communication on this one, either supporting or against, other than, of course, the petitioners who filed.
Thank you. Are the petitioners here? Do you have anything you'd like to add? No? Do we have anyone in the house have anything to add? No? Board discussion?
Seems like it meets the requirements. It's not going to take any farmland out of operation.
I would agree.
Looks like a pretty nice, easy one to approve.
Yep.
So, anybody else? All right, so I'd like to make a motion to approve application CC 2024-00129 according to the findings of the staff report, which were incorporated in the motion by reference, and I don't see any conditions there either. I think it's nice and clean, so.
I'll second.
And we'll do a roll call vote.
Give me just a moment. All right, Stacy Pettigo,
Yes.
Scott Hetzensberger,
Yes.
and Chester Bankus.
Yes.
All right, 3-0. So your next step will be to start working with a surveyor to put together a plat for a 1-lot minor subdivision that meets the filing requirements. You can reach out to our office if you got questions about that. And you're welcome to stay if you just feel like seeing what else is going on, but you don't have to, and we're not offended if you have other things you want to do with your evening.
Okay, let's move on to application CC 2024-00135, docket 1224SE, the petition of Orem Enterprises LLC.
You're welcome.
And if you'd walk us through that staff report.
Yes.
Yep,
I
right there.
sent that out to everybody.
Okay. All right, so the staff report on this one, as you noted, this is Orem Enterprises. This is a request for a special exception for a farm-based business, Class 2, for the retail sales of packaged meat products. So both this property and everything surrounding it are zoned agriculturally. This site consists of 5 acres on the south side of East 800 North, between North County Road 750 East and 830 East in Section 36 of Warren Township. There's an existing home on the site, and then there's a barn as well. The petitioner would like to add another small structure that he would like to equip with freezers to store packaged meat that will be processed off-site, but will come from cattle and bison that are raised on-site. The petitioner is in the process of getting approval from the state for either a state design release or a sign-off that this structure will be exempt because it's on an agricultural operation. But either way, they're willing to comply. On the second page, you can see the proposed site plan that kind of shows you the existing barn. You can see the cattle there. I assume some of them may be bison, but to the back. And the proposed shop location there in the front where they'd be placing their meat so customers could come to that location. You can see the petition site there as well. So because farm-based businesses are not a super common request that comes through the board a lot, I'm gonna try to abbreviate it here, but we did place the entirety of the definition of what a farm-based business is in Class 1 versus Class 2. For the board, since we've got an audience, I'll try to sum that up. So a farm-based business is a business that's normally associated with agriculture, involving items primarily produced on the farm itself. These would be things like animal boarding, or riding a therapeutic stable, a tree farm, an orchard, a gardening club, an organic farm, an animal breeder, a grain sales office, herb sales, a winery, sales of products, like a farm market that are produced there on the farm. So some farm-based businesses can be home occupations, some can be temporary uses. Most restrictive standards apply in the case of a conflict. And in this case, it's a farm-based business Class 2, which is going to be a situation where it may or may not be seasonal or periodic. It creates an increase of traffic that's a little bit above what would normally be expected at a farm. And then I think what probably caught this one, if it's not on at least 20 acres of land, it's automatically a farm-based business Class 2 because 20 acres is defined as a farm, generally speaking. And then there's some rules about how many employees as well. So in this case, my guess is it's that land size that bounced them into it. It's a Class 2. In terms of the request analysis, there's a series of special exception standards from Section 203.11. First, the proposed use conforms to the district provisions in which it will be located and the general regulations of the ordinance. So farm-based business Class 2 is use 1.17 on Table A of the Unified Development Ordinance. There's no specific development standards for the use in the ordinance other than the definition. There's some buffering that'll be required with landscaping and some parking requirements, but given the size of the site, those should not be an issue to meet. And in this case, since it's meat sales of meat raised on the property, there's not any question about whether or not it's directly related to an agricultural activity. 2, the proposed use shall not involve an element or cause a condition that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to other property or persons, and shall comply with the performance standards herein. The health department has no objections in this case because there is not a kitchen or a septic involved. The meat will actually be processed off-site and then brought back simply as a sales location. So 3, the proposed use shall be sited, oriented, and landscaped so the relationship of its buildings and grounds to adjacent buildings and properties do not impair health, safety, or comfort, nor adversely affect values of adjacent properties. So the proposal is to place a 12 by 20 mini barn on the petition site, and then place the packaged processed meat that are already raised on the site. That meat in a small scale in that building. The building will hold freezers, and customers can come in and purchase that meat on a limited basis within limited hours, in order to kind of see how that goes. Obviously, if it grows into something larger, they may need to come back to the board, depending on what it is they decide to do and whether they do it there or somewhere else. 4, the proposed use shall produce a total environmental effect consistent with and not harmful to the environment of the neighborhood. So the cattle and bison are already being raised on the parcel directly south of the petition site. Petitioner is currently selling meat, but he delivers it directly to the customers. The meat is USDA inspected, and the freezers are all inspected for temperature control by the health department as well. The storage that's being proposed, for where the freezers will sit, is a mini barn. It's not going to look inconsistent with the area around it. 5, the proposed use to organize vehicular access and parking to minimize conflicting traffic movement on adjacent streets. So given the petition site is on 5 acres, there's plenty of area for the required parking spaces for the Class 2 farm-based business. And finally, the proposed use will promote the objectives of the ordinance and be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So community heritage and quality of life, Goal 5, Objective 1 of the comprehensive plan states to encourage a wide variety of agriculturally based tourism and farm-based business opportunities. Farm-based businesses are well-suited in agricultural areas, and this product is directly related to what's raised on the farm, so it would seem to very clearly meet that goal. Consequently, staff does recommend approval of the special exception with the condition that the structure that is used for sales must meet all state and local codes. And just so the board has no misunderstanding, like the applicant is proposing to use a mini barn, but if either that's not able to be approved by the state, or it's not able to meet local building codes for the purpose, or some combination, staff is not implying or in any way stating that they should have to come back to the board if they turn out to put up some sort of small pole structure instead. The idea is that it's a small building for that use, as long as they can get the approvals off the building code side for the mini barn. We don't have a problem with that, but if for some reason they can't, if they have this approval, we wouldn't route them back as long as what they were doing was similar in size.
Thank you.
Oh, I almost forgot. I do have a letter. We just received this this morning, actually.
Yeah,
Was
I
it this
did-
morning?
I did send it
Yep,
out
and
to
it
the
was
members.
sent on to you. It is a letter of support from Brett Barry. In the interest of not reading it, did you all receive that letter and have a chance to read through it?
I did not read that.
Okay, so Chester did not, so I'm going to go ahead and read it into the record. So this is to the Clinton County Board of Zoning Appeals, and it reads, I am writing to comment on the approval of the special exception to operate a farm-based business in order to sell processed meat raised by Orem Farms. We have purchased beef from Orem Farms for 2 or 3 years now and have found it to be excellent. Although we live in a farm community, it should be considered it should be considered a food desert, since the nearest retail establishment to buy beef is in Howard County, which is over a half hour away by bicycle or horse. I support having a retail farm business within our small community, and I'd like to see more of the kind. Please add your approval to mine. Regards, Brett Barry. As a horseback rider, I guess it depends on the speed at which you go, but definitely a letter of support. And this person is located on 800 North in Forest, so not an adjacent neighbor, but is in that quadrant of the county.
He actually is an adjacent neighbor. He is
Oh,
the
is he?
first house next to the farm.
Okay, so Warren Township, but I guess you are way over there on the
Yeah.
eastern side of Warren, so I stand corrected. We've received no other communication beyond that, either in support or objection.
Perfect. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Everything we want, we're just trying to expand slowly and not trying to overdo it. Just trying to basically take the freezers out of the house so that the grandkids, people that might come to the house to buy, we really don't want them coming into the house or anything. We're trying to separate us for security reasons and safety. Focus.
All right, thank you.
Scott, I would just add that from an economic development standpoint, we've been working with the Orms for over a year now, and they're just a great family and have a great product, and they're looking at bringing, you're talking about the food desert. We're seeing more and more requests for wanting to know where the food is coming from, and this is a great example of that. And knowing that where the food is grown locally, it's sold locally, it's packaged locally, and I think it's gonna be a huge hit. So, bison over, very healthy, product, and we wholeheartedly support this project.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else? Board discussion?
I think it's exciting to see businesses grow. It's great to have neighbors that are supporting it and writing letters of support. Again, this looks like a very nice report, staff report, and it's recommended approval. Things are all cared for in a nice orderly fashion, so with that, see if there's any other.
No.
All right, so with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve application number, go back here to the beginning here. Make sure I get the right one here. Oh boy, here we go. CC 2024-00135, according to the findings of the staff report, which are incorporated in the motion by reference, with the conditions that the structure that is used for the sales must meet all state and local codes.
Do I have a second?
I will second.
And we'll do roll call vote, please.
Give me just a moment. All right, Stacy Pettigo,
Yes.
Scott Hetzensberger,
Yes.
and Chester Pincus.
Yes,
Right, so Jonas, once you hear back from the state, will then be to communicate with us towards meeting what we need and getting your permits.
Perfect. Thank you.
thank you.
Any objections to following in order now, from the top now?
Well, this is the biggest one, so you might want to
We can do that, sure.
hit that one.
All right, let's try application CC 2024-00107, which is docket number 1024SE, the petition of Darren Skiles.
Yep. Sorry, just making sure we have our notes in order, so we end up handing you back a set of minutes that actually reflects what you did. All right, so as you noted, this is the application of Darren Skiles, and it's a request for a special exception for a single residence in the agricultural district. Both this property and everything surrounding it are agricultural. The site itself consists of 11.34 acres on the north side of West County Road 500 North. It's between 600 West and 500 West in Section 11 of Ross Township. It's a first split off of an 80.92 acre parent tract. And similarly to one we heard earlier tonight, this site is all woodland surrounded by farm ground, and does have wetlands within that woodland. Again, the petitioner did hire a delineation consultant. This area does contain some actual wetlands, but they are less than what Beacon shows, so there is room around the wetlands for development to be considered. The report from the consultant has not yet arrived in its final form, but the area that the consultant started in, where the petitioner hopes to place the new dwelling, has been completed and some preliminary information given to us, so we had some idea of what we were looking at. So you can see on the zoning map there on that first page how the wetlands are noted, and I would actually note in this particular case, even if those wetlands were accurate, there is room around them for development. But as it turns out, it's not all of it that does have the wetland. So on the second page, you've got a picture that shows you that woodland area. It's a pretty good sized woods. And that picture is from 500 North. Staff did score this under the point system. It only scored 3 points. which is not real surprising because, again, we've got a lot size between 3 and 19 acres. We usually try to encourage smaller and larger if it's being cut out of tillable, so it either keeps being farmed or you minimize what's coming out. And then the lot is, again, less than a half mile from a confined feeding operation. The northeast corner of the lot measures 1,586 foot from the confined feeding, so a dwelling anywhere on this lot would still meet the quarter-mile required setback, especially given the dwelling would be at least 15 to 20 foot further in from the property line due to lot line setbacks if they set it at the full extent. In terms of request analysis, first, the lot shall be located such that the proximity to other dwellings, the configuration of the parent tract, and the location of creeks, ditches, and other natural features have the least negative impact on the use of agricultural equipment or the use of the property as a farm. So this site is completely woodland. There's tillable ground surrounding it. There are 2 other dwellings in the vicinity of the petition site. 2, locating a dwelling on the new lot would not require changes in road surfaces or bridges. So according to Beacon, this is a paved road, but when staff drove out there, we found the road was actually gravel, and you can see that in the picture. So we're calling it a gravel road. But in either case, the road does appear to be well maintained. It does serve farm equipment that accesses farmland sites in the vicinity, including the farmland around this site, as well as 2 other homes. 1 additional dwelling is not going to have a significant increase on traffic flow and volume. And this is we didn't see that as being a significant issue for the county in terms of adding 1 site there. 3, locating a dwelling on the new lot would not interfere with current agricultural practices in the adjacent area, nor substantially restrict the expansion of confined feedings and other agricultural practices. So this is an 11.34 acre lot. It's off 500 North. It's completely woodland. The item permitted confined feeding is off the northeast corner of the lot, and that did cause a deduction of 2 points on the point system. But given that it's over a quarter mile, there would be no need of a variance for either the confined feeding or this lot in the future. There's also already another home to the east that sits right at that quarter mile from the confined feeding. So a home here would not have any greater effect than the existing one to the east already does if the confined feeding facility should wish to expand. And you can see there's a green circle that shows you from the outside boundary what that quarter mile would look like. And then you can see the confined feeding up there. We've drawn a line with a measurement, and you can see there's another house to the east that, while we didn't draw a circle around it, is substantially closer. 4, that there's mitigating circumstances in the application of the above rating criteria. So again, the primary mitigating circumstances, the petition site is all woodland. It's not taking any farmland out of production, and it does contain some wetland areas. So it's not ideal to turn into tillable land because you would be changing the function of that as an area that does provide drainage if you attempted to clear cut it and till it. That moves us on to the 6 special exception standards in 203.11. So first, the proposed use conforms to the district provisions in which it will be located in the general regulations of the ordinance. If a special exception is granted, then a single-family home would be permitted on the property. If approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals, it will need to go through minor subdivision approval. 2, the proposed use shall not involve an element or cause a condition that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to another property or persons, and shall comply with the performance standards herein. So according to the health department, there's no objections. They do have a soil test report. The lot is suitable for septic, but it will require a perimeter drain outlet, which can be identified at the minor subdivision stage. As this is part of a larger parent tract, there should be tile or other drainage they can locate, but they will have to do that in order to get their subdivision approved. 3, the proposed use shall be sited oriented and landscaped so that the relations of its buildings and grounds to adjacent buildings and properties do not impair health, safety, or comfort, nor adversely affect values of adjacent properties. So this site is completely woodland, surrounded by farmland. There's an existing dwelling to the east and one to the west, both less than a quarter mile away from the petition site. A new home on the proposed lot would be spaced from those dwellings. It shouldn't really change the general rural look of the area, being that it's in the woods. There should be some screening. 4, the proposed use shall produce a total environmental effect consistent with and not harmful to the effect of the neighborhood. Again, the site is in woodland, surrounded by farmland. There's already 2 existing homes in the vicinity within, the setback areas that we we use for confined feeding and grain handling. So a rural home would be consistent with what's already there. 5, proposed use shall organize vehicular access and parking to minimize conflicting traffic movement on adjacent streets. So one home requires 2 parking spaces. That should not be something that on 10 acres cannot be accommodated. Finally, the proposed use shall promote the objectives of the ordinance and be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So again, similarly to the other one, we look at what the comprehensive plan says the density should be in an agricultural area. Ross Township future land use plan does designate this for primarily agricultural land, but notes that residential development is designated for Edna Mills and then eastward and also south of Rossville. So there's a recognition that Ross Township is a transitional area where you see both residences and farm ground. This area is designated for agriculture, but dwellings are well spaced and conform to the average density for the A1 district of no more than 1 home for every 20 acres. Additionally, this proposal is on property that is woodland with some spots of wetland, so it's not taking farmland out of production. It would appear that a new lot in this location would not adversely affect the future plan of continued agricultural use in the surrounding vicinity, and it's consistent with those objectives in the comprehensive plan. Consequently, staff recommends approving the request for a single home, and minor subdivision will be necessary. There was an associated map transferred that showed the side of the property in which they plan to place the home, and
Okay, go ahead.
okay, am I wrong? Sorry. That it was showing where the home was going to be located and that where they had delineated the wetlands that would most immediately affect that, and they're still finishing the other side of the property, but anything there will not negatively affect the home site.
Thank you. Petitioner here. Do you have anything you'd like to add? Do you have any other additions in the audience? No? Board discussion? I'm good too. I think it's fine.
Yeah, doesn't take any farmland out of operation. It's a good use of some wooded area. Still maintains a wetland. Looks like a nice opportunity for me to move ahead. So, here we go again. I'll make a motion to approve application CC 2024-0017 according to the findings of the staff report, which are incorporated in the motion by reference. And there are no conditions there other than what they have to get us other approval for, correct?
Yep.
So,
Thank you.
motion's made.
Second.
Okay, Stacy Pettigo,
Yes.
Scott Hudsonsberger,
Yes.
and Chester Benkus.
Yes.
Okay, 3-0. So again, like the other case, you guys are ready to find a surveyor to help you put a plat together for the single lot and, locate your drainage outlet and move on to the details of how that site's gonna work. And you can ask our office if you've got questions about what you need to gather.
And if you need a list of the surveyors, I have a list there at the office. Just stop by and we'll get you. Okay. And that I did send out yesterday. I don't know if you've seen that.
Perfect. I think we're doing well. Let's try application CC 2024-00101, docket 0924 SE, the petition of Paul Edwards.
Okay, so, this site, I'll go ahead and present the staff report, and then, I've got a letter and some additional comment I'll add at the end of that. So, first off, again, this is the petition of Paul Edwards. It's a request for a special exception, for residents in the A1 district, in this case, 3 residences. The property is zoned agriculturally, as is the immediate surrounding land. However, this is within a mile of the town of Mulberry, where we generally prioritize increasing development, not specific to Mulberry, but any town or city. That mile around is the area where you begin to see houses and businesses, and eventually annexations over time. So this petition site consists of 23.5 acres on the west side of North County Road 700 West, between State Road 38 and 500 North in Section 16 of Madison Township. The petition site is its own parent tract, so it's self-contained. It's the first time any splits have occurred. The petitioner would like to split the tract up to make 3 buildable lots. He would like to make one lot on the north end, which would be 13.5 acres for himself and his family to reside in, and then he would like additionally 2 5-acre lots. Staff did score all 3 lots under the point system, but none were able to score enough points. That's actually very typical with the point system when it's more than a single lot, because the idea is if you're starting to create more houses, it really probably should, be coming for a conversation, not necessarily because it doesn't work, but it might or it might not, and warrants conversation. So I would note that it's rare to have more than 1 lot, maybe 2, if it's really close to a town, score administratively before it comes to the formal process. There is floodplain through the northern portion of the parent tract, and if approvals are obtained, that's going to be mostly across that tract traded to the north. The site is between 1/2 and 1 mile from both the urban growth area boundary and the town limits of the town of Mulberry. There's a map there on the second page that just shows you the urban growth area for Mulberry, the town limit, this petition site, and then the floodplain layer also there. You can see how really this whole group of fields is very divided with waterways and poorly drained land. There's proposed lots and acreages matched with the soil reports there at the bottom of that too, so you can kind of see how they're proposing to divide that up. So that northern lot is going to be most of the floodplain, but there'll be enough area left a house can fit around it. And then your other 2 lots would be out of the floodplain. So there's a picture of the site looking from the southeast corner off of 700 West. The tree line seen in the photo to the north that's not on the petition site, that's just beyond it. That little group of trees that's kind of scraggly, that's along that waterway there. So just to help orient you. So the applicant is seeking approval for the 3 dwellings. There's 4 criteria. The first we have to examine in section 513.03 of the Unified Development Ordinance. So first, that the lot be located such that the proximity to other dwellings, the configuration of the parent tract, and the location of creeks, ditches, and other natural features have the least negative impact on the use of agricultural equipment or the use of the property as part of a farm. So this site has a line of woods that runs on the north end of it, an open ditch running through it, and floodplain running across it. There's 2 other dwellings already in close proximity. 3 dwellings on this tract would eliminate farming activities on it, but would not appear to affect farming activities on other lots in the area. There are fence rows. It does not appear this is being used as part of broader farm ground owned by the petitioner, and it's a section of a field that's awkwardly shaped. It appears it just is a smaller property that at some point got split off of other farms or properties in history. There's a fence row on the west side. You've basically got 2 irregular small areas that have been farmed, but they're not farmed as part of larger fields. 2, locating dwellings on the new lots would not require changes in road surfaces or bridges. So this is on a paved road. There's really not any concerns about road surfaces in this particular situation. 3, locating dwellings on the new lots would not interfere with current agricultural practices or substantially restrict the expansion of confined feedings and other ag practices. So this location does not have confined feedings in the area, and I would further note, because of the proximity to Mulberry, confined feeding operations could not be located, in these areas. There's not any large grain handling operations either, which would also be limited close to a town. Doesn't appear that it's going to interfere with intense agriculture that can only occur in the agricultural district. 4, mitigating circumstances in the application of the above rating criteria. So the primary mitigating circumstance that would make this lot a point of conversation, other than its close proximity to a town, is that it does have an open ditch with substantial floodplain running along it. Current agricultural practices are having to maneuver around the ditch and the fence row, making it an irregular set of small shapes rather than ideal farm ground where you have open fields. Moving on from that, we've got the 6 special exception standards we look at for every special exception in section 203.11. So first, the proposed use conforms to the district provisions in which it will be located in all general regulations of the ordinance. So if special exceptions use is granted, then 3 single-family homes would be permitted on 3 separate lots. And of course, minor subdivision approval would have to be obtained as well. 2, the proposed use shall not involve an element or cause a condition that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to other property or persons, and shall comply with the performance standards herein. So the health department does not have objections to the request. They do have min specs for the 3 proposed lots. They all can support septic systems, but they will have to be sand line systems because of the high levels of loam. 3, the proposed use shall be sited, oriented, and landscaped so the relationship of its buildings and grounds to adjacent buildings and properties do not impair health, safety, or comfort, nor adversely affect value. So this site is surrounded by farmland with woodland on the north end. The town of Mulberry's limits are less than a mile to the west. There's 2 other existing homes in the immediate vicinity and more in the general vicinity. 3 dwellings on large 5-acre lots would appear to mesh well. The only comment from staff, which I think I get into more detail later on, is this close to town, ideally, staff would prefer to see far more dwellings on this lot. They did actually try for 4, but because of that floodplain, the same things that are limiting on farming are also limiting on septic systems. So without sewer being run, which is probably some time away, it's a difficult location to put a large number of homes in. So that's why you're only seeing 3 in the request versus more. 4, the proposed use shall produce a total environmental effect consistent with and not harmful to the neighborhood. So there are 2 other existing residences in the area. This is not an area of intense CAFOs and confined feedings and grain operations. It's not a place those can occur because of the town being there. So it would appear to be consistent with the transitional environment of a spot that's on the edge between residential and agricultural uses. 5, the proposed use shall organize vehicular access and parking to minimize conflicting traffic movement. So each of those lots requires 2 off-street parking spaces. Given the size of the lots, there's really no concern. You can fit 2 vehicles on each of those lots. Finally, the proposed use promotes the objectives of the ordinance and shall be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So again, when you're in agricultural land, here's where we have 2 kind of conflicting sections of our comprehensive plan that we have to wrestle with. First, of course, you have the general statement in Objective 1, Policy 1 to minimize development in agricultural land. However, you also have the Madison Township Future Land Use Plan, which designates the township as having a varied topography and areas that are more suited for rural residential development. Also, the recognition that Madison Township, like Ross Township, will experience increasing development pressure because of the close proximity of I-65 and Lafayette. And because these new lots are less than a mile from State Road 38 and right close to a mile from Mulberry, and there's other dwellings already there, and they're an awkward shape for farming, it would appear that in this case it would be consistent with the comprehensive plan because it's in an area designated to see growth over time near the town. So consequently, staff recommends to approve the request for 3 new homes, and this is where, we stuck this in. But staff does have a concern, because this is close to Mulberry, that 3 houses in 23 acres is a wasteful density. It's not really the highest and best when you're talking about a housing use. It would be better to have a greater density of homes on 1 to 3 acre lots with some sort of common space. But the applicant did try for more homes, and that floodplain is just very restrictive in what can actually go there in terms of use. So it did get reworked into 3 larger lots. It would appear that sewer and water will be needed before density can be increased to what would be a more ideal beneficial use when you're trading land uses. So there may be some merit in discussing not allowing houses on these lots to be placed in a way that would prohibit further subdivision or approval down the road when or if a waste disposal solution could be available. The 3-lot minor subdivision approval, of course, is necessary. And there's a preliminary.
No, that's I wanted to say, the petitioner handed that to me.
Okay, this was handed to you.
He's gonna present it tonight.
Okay, I guess the petitioner will present this, but we've got a preliminary, just sort of division of what they're looking at. I'll let them present that since they've brought it tonight, but we do have a copy for the file. I do want to note at the point of writing the staff report, we had received no communication of any kind from anyone. However, we did receive some communication since then, which was forwarded onto the board. So again, I'll summarize this, but I want to ask, did you receive this letter? And if so, did you have a chance to read it? Okay, so I'll go ahead and just summarize it. This is a letter from Joanne Rothenberger. Hopefully she's here tonight, but I believe looking at the map that this property owner is adjacent to the north with the woodland and then some tillable to the north of that. This petitioner would be against granting 3 non-farm dwellings and really siding with the part of the comprehensive plan that would say, hey, it's farm ground, period. You know, don't look at the town of Mulberry, just look at the farm ground. And I would note on that note that really what the board's gonna have to wrestle with on this one between those two sides is what's the predominant driving force? Is it the town of Mulberry and the residential uses that begin to branch out from that nearby town? Or is it, is this premium farm ground that really is significant from an agricultural perspective? I imagine, given the crowd, maybe other people here who have things they want to say, you know, about this particular development. But I would note that if you do choose to deny the staff report, particularly given that we had received no communication up to that point, was set up, you know, with the flow of logic. So the reminder is, if you decide, as you listen to this and you look at the different sides tonight, that you feel that it should be denied or changed in some way, then you would need to make sure you change your findings to show that it does not meet at least one of those and why. I think that's doable if that's your choice. It's just making sure you're consistent in your motion with where your logic leads. I think there really are two sides of this to wrestle with. So with that, I'll pass off to the board and let you move on to the petitioner.
Excellent. Petitioner here. Would you?
I have a copy of the preliminary survey.
While he's handing that out, if you would please, if anyone needs to speak, I need you to go to the microphone, and I also need you to state what your name is, so I can put it in the minutes.
We have a copy for the file.
Thank
Yep.
you.
If you had anything to say with that, if you could go to the mic.
Basically, we're trying to build our dream home on track 1. And I'm 52 years old. So I'd like to slow down, eventually retire, and 23 acres of mowing grass is not in my book. I am an independent entrepreneur, so when I look at keeping this as farmland and owning the property, we're going to risk of insurance and being sued. I'm sure there's farmers in here who either rent or have property that is rented. When you have an accident on your property, you carry liability insurance of some type. So I look at the bottom line of how much money do I make and what am I putting up against losing it. And farm accidents happen. So I have to weigh that. I hope it never happens. But if it does, I don't want to take that and worry about it. I used to farm as a kid. I watched a farmer lose his arm. That put me out of it. So what we're trying to do is basically eventually maybe have people build a single family dwelling there on lot 2 and track 2 and 3. So when I've been looking, everybody said, oh, we can't find area or land. Well, I'd like, well, how much land? 5 acres, 10 acres? How much land is too much for us? Because I was actually wanting to go to 4 until I realized there was this floodplain. Because originally the 4th one would have been right there at the creek and run up there and just made, I think it was 3.5 acres. Easy 10 acres, that's fine. So then as I started thinking about it, well, who's going to want to buy 3.5 acres with floodplain in it? Nobody's going to want that. So we just pushed it into the 13.5. But that's the preliminary, what it would look like from R.W. Groves, Lafayette. I'm willing to answer any question. I just don't know what you need from me. Because right now, she and I are currently going through the plans of what house we would build. We haven't thought anything more of track 2 and 3. But I do know, looking at track 2 and 3, from what I've seen from the elevation, it's not much higher than that floodplain. It's like maybe 4 foot. So you're building up in that area to be built. And if we would not be farming this. This would be grass no matter what. As far as putting houses in there, people would want at least an acre, I guess. And you're asking for the county to put utilities out. I just don't see that happening soon. Looking at the growth of the last 20 years, Mulberry looks the same.
I would note, just for you board's information, just caused me to wonder it, as you hear, like, if it were a single lot, single house on the whole thing, it would score and would not be before the board. So should you, depending on what you decide, on one house, that would be differently. It's just not how he scored it. But it would be a parent tract with 20 or more, not divided. So that's an automatic 10 points, and then the proximity to other things would build upon that. 10 points is the minimum you need to be administratively approved. So it's the fact that he wanted to divide this into more that, caused it not to score, because then those points got distributed. But listening to him, I just thought, well, okay, if he just had one on the 23, how would that be handled? So in case any of you are wondering that as well, I just took a quick look at the point system, and it would score extremely generously, which makes sense given its location close to Mulberry, if it was a single lot. And it would be subdivision exempt, so no hearings at all.
So does that mean it received administrative approval?
If it were all together.
Right, the 20.
As soon as we're putting more than one house on the 23, then it changes things.
Understand. Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
So,
Perfect.
Do we have anyone else that'd like to add anything? No?
Once.
Don't everybody rush.
sorry, we have to broadcast it, and it's hard for people who watch online to know what's happening if they can't hear.
Yeah. I'm Sandy Kinsler, and we own the property just west of on the other side of the tree line. Yes, not to the north, but to the west. We have an open ditch that's a private ditch. So kind of want to know if you're planning on building a pond or your septic, where that's going to go. Those things are kind of in my mind.
So a septic cannot go in a floodplain, and I know to you it's an open ditch, but it is actually a regulated DNR stream. So it has a floodplain around it, so that means that septics can't go in that floodplain at all. And then houses and other structures, including pole barns for agriculture, have to be elevated and moved, higher than that base flood elevation. So now a pond is a different question. That would get waterway permits. I have no idea. You'd have to answer about that. But septics would have to be out of the floodplain area, meaning away from the stream.
When we were talking about different lots, usually you like a little pond or something pretty, so that was a question. And then the accidents and the liabilities when you move houses in, and different families that have never been in the country. That is a huge, I put up no trespassing signs all the time, and they just get torn up and ripped down. So I would like to see, if it does go into a subdivision as a county, just to make it required that you put up the metal signs on the metal poles every 20 feet, or whatever the rule is, to keep the farmer or the landowner safe from getting
We don't
sued.
have a requirement that a subdivision post internal no trespassing signs, but we do require that in the covenants, an agricultural protection covenant be placed that is fairly broad, that states anyone that lives on those lots in the future forfeits the right to take legal action against a farmer for a normal agriculturally accepted activity. So, if you go open a well there and you pour farmer chemicals down it, it's not going to protect you. But if somebody in the future lives there who doesn't like the dust because you're harvesting, we also have an enforcement clause in that states that any property within, it's usually a quarter mile, has the right to enforce. So that would mean that the neighboring farmer, should he find himself in a conflict, would be able to use that covenant to defend themselves. So we do that. But in terms of no trespassing signs, I guess that would be another, that's not something in our
That's
standard
a pain.
ordinance.
That's a pain,
And
mushrooms coming. So,
yeah, and I don't know of any on Mulberry's side. I know you're kind of, close there, but that would be something the board would have to discuss if they wanted to place it as a condition that 100 no trespassing signs be placed every 20 feet or whatever it ends up being. Every 20 foot is going to be a lot of them.
Right,
So.
right. No, I welcome new neighbors. As long as you don't fire AK-47s through our yard. We've had that in the past, so, yeah, we do have some gun lovers around, but, anyway. So,
I guess I just wanted to answer from that side. We do have ag protection and covenants, and given these will be less than 20-acre lots, they're not exempt from the subdivision ordinance, so those do have to be adopted. Also, any drainage, if there was a pond or something like that, that would get platted in with the plat as well if it gets that far.
Very good.
Quick comment about the trespassing and trespassing. If you paint purple around a tree, that is the thing that says no trespassing.
Oh, didn't know that.
So for the record, for anyone listening online, the applicant just pointed out for the sake of education that purple painted or wrapped around a tree or a post that represents no trespassing without the full sign. So
Well, that'll save me a lot of money.
Now they'll just cut your tree down. Do we have any other comments?
I'm Joanne Rothenberger, and we used to own that ground many years ago, and I am so tired of people coming from the city and trying to take farm ground away. My brother-in-law sold that ground, so I don't own it anymore. But do you own the ground already? You're the ones that own it, okay. But there's two houses out there that they don't keep the houses up very well, and it takes our countryside down. And there's always things happen in the country when you're farming and that sort of thing that is just, city people gripe about it, and I'm tired of it. We need to save our farm ground. So I'm sorry. Thank you.
don't apologize for your opinion. I mean, the board has to figure it out, but, and
Anyone else? Nope. Board discussion? Fire away.
Well, like Liz says, I think there's arguments on both sides of the issue. It's nice to have farm ground. It's nice to have places to live. It'd be nice if we could make more out of the more residences in this amount of area, but we don't have the capability with city utilities and other things to make that happen. That might happen in the future, and I don't know if that'd be a way that you could prepare it so that it would happen in orderly, or be able to happen orderly in the future. But as I see it, that's really your option to do, and it could benefit you if you did that. It may not. I don't know.
You know, where we are in terms of procedurally, this is, your decision is it appropriate for there to be
3 homes.
three homes?
Instead
Not
of
more
one,
than 3 homes.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. right.
instead of the
more than-
one home, the point system might approve around the board.
But now, the area plan commission, when they review the subdivision, one of the things that they could say is, well, okay, we're going to permit 3 separate lots, but we're going to require that you lay them out in a manner that they can be further divided in the future if there should become drainage improvements, or more likely it's going to be sanitary sewers. You know, right now, the anticipation for an extension of sanitary sewers there is not.
Right.
Because I think Mulberry is on a order for no additional taps.
Oh, boy.
I think I'm right on that.
Colfax is. I had not heard that Mulberry was on a strict order, but I know all 4
It
towns
is-
struggle.
Yeah.
And I think
they're
Michigan
all-
Town
they're
does
all
as well.
fighting the same,
Items regulation keeps going up, and then,
Right.
you have,
yeah,
unless you can add a few hundred homes, you're dealing with a set of inputs.
yeah. So
So,
one thing is one possibility is that the area plan commission in their jurisdiction could say, okay, we're going to approve a 3-lot subdivision, but we're going to require that we're going to set forth where the home sites have to be, and that you have to leave additional, and that you can't have covenants in that prohibit further division.
Because normally, when they're out in rural areas, we do prohibit further division on like a 1 lot, 1 acre.
Yeah.
But this might be a case where, to be honest, if eventually 10 homes were here, you just saved 10 to 20 acres of farm ground in squarer, more farmable areas in the next mile out from Mulberry to prevent sprawl,
So,
But the other, I mean, you can make arguments on both sides. I think the point is that the area plan can work out the devil of the details should this board decide that at least 3 are appropriate. Now, if you decide 3 aren't appropriate and he comes back and just does his 1 through the point system, doesn't prohibit him from coming back in the future if something changes, and further subdividing the lot.
So you're saying if we have approval for 3 lots today, the area plan commission could say, you got those 3 lots, but we're gonna make provisions to put 5, 6, 7, 8.
Or we're gonna make provisions to make sure you don't do something that stops you from putting those additional,
in the future. So you haven't, by your,
things like drive easements and,
Yeah.
placement of homes so that it could be further.
Would it actually be platted differently? Or platted?
Probably be in the covenants allowing the option as opposed to banning the option.
Okay.
It'd be
And
something they'd have to wrestle with.
in the site plans that are approved, they could require that there be where the home sites are, so that there's adequate future area to carve out an easement if you wanted to.
Well, you look at like a lot that size and home placement, if you placed a home in a pole barn, like right across the middle with a long drive, well, now it's really hard to subdivide.
Yes.
Whereas if you put them up close to the road and you leave the back as excess land, well, now you could get 2 more lots out of it, which is 6 total. But, I mean, that's something that, whether or not that's what the plan commission feels, it's just a merit of conversation that if you're going to developing with more density is better, because there is a need for housing, and you really don't want it on 5-acre lots through all your farm ground. You want it as close to an acre per house, or if you can get sewer, even less, as you can possibly get. So the land that it occupies is compacted,
Yeah. So should it be approved, it can be changed as far as the number of houses that are provided for on this particular.
Well, they would have to come back
Yeah.
to you to get approval for more than 3.
Okay.
Or if eventually it's likely this will be residential land, not agricultural, given long enough. But is that 10 years, is that 20 years, is that
Right.
100 years? I mean, if you're within a mile of a town, we know that the sewer coming out to the interchange was sized appropriately to handle significant additional residential and commercial development in Perry, Washington, and Madison townships, just depending on the shape of that. So it may not even be Mulberry from whence ultimately, there's just some unknowns in terms of what happens. But we know with 52 and 65 on that quadrant of the county and Lafayette, it's going to continue to be a balancing act between the need for homes and the need for farm ground and the desire to protect our heritage and the desire of the small towns and their need to be able to expand. And I think you're just getting the front line of those 2 polar needs coming up against each other. And this site is right there on that 1 mile line between where, another half mile over and we'd be going, all right, it's the ag side that's clearly there. If it was right up against the town limits, there wouldn't be a debate either. You'd be like, all right, it's right there. You get something that's halfway between that you have to wrestle with.
So we can approve it, and if the area plan commission wants to do different, they can do it.
Well, they can't undo your approval,
But it'll
so.
come back to us for additional approval or something like that.
If it was still zoned agriculturally at a future point,
Right.
and again, if it couldn't score on the point system. Now, this lot size at some point, I don't know exactly where, Kat might know off the top of her head more quicker than me, but there's only so many divisions you can make, and it'd still be agricultural before an applicant is required to rezone.
This is the parent track, right?
It is the parent tract.
Okay, so,
Yep.
yeah, it would, be able to get, if you go 3 now, they could do, I think 2 more. one or two more, and then they'd have to rezone.
to residential, at which point it would be plan commission and county commissioners, so it's like
I
there's
think it's
different,
4 or 5 then at that size.
you know. Or alternatively, on the other side of it, you look at, okay, one house and then wait and see what happens in the area. You know, you can argue both sides of that.
Well, it looks like it's we'd like to have the farmland, but we'd like to have the housing also. So I guess with that, I'm gonna make a motion to approve, unless there's some other, I'd like to make a motion to approve application number. Make sure I got the right one here. CC 2024-00101, according to the findings of the staff report, which are incorporated in motion by reference. I don't think there are any conditions in that particular one. I know there's a lot under the approval, but just talks about the discussion.
Yeah, no conditions on that one. I mean, it's gonna have things it has to deal with, but they're all already regulation in terms of the floodplain and the
Right.
covenants and things like that.
So there's the motion.
I'll second.
Okay. And roll call vote when you get a moment.
All right, Stacy Pedigo,
Yes.
Scott Hetzensberger,
Yes.
Chester Bankus.
Yes.
All right. 3-0. So again, if you need a list of surveyors, your next step is gonna be starting to prepare a plat, figuring out drainage, you know, through the drainage board, there's a number of steps there, so you can reach out to the office.
All right. Do we have anything else on the?
I don't believe I have any new business.
I do want to mention that we did have a filing today, so we will have a meeting next month
April?
in April. And I did get it reserved for this Frankfurt City Council chambers, so, because this room will be closed.
For voting.
Is that Old
For voting.
Stony?
So next month will be at Old Stony downstairs.
Okay. All right.
All right, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Thank you for educating me, Jay. I appreciate
You
it.